Mhm. Examples. Oh, you are here. I would like to talk about extremism because I am worried. I have the feeling that in the last 4 years, maybe from Corona, there is an increasing level of opposite views that are incompatible and extreme. So I will try to define extremism, compare it to other concepts, and try to agree on a general definition and list some examples, then try to identify what's the problem, but also highlighting some positive aspects, because we don't want to be extremists on defining extremism, right? And then I try to explore possible solution. So the word extremism comes from space. It's a metaphor that originally has something to do with position on an extremity or an end of something respect to the center. So is relative. And when we use extremism in a broad sense that is metaphorical, applying to different fields, we maintain the same relativity. So is context dependent. There is no absolute extremism, nothing. I mean, in the Victorian era, vote for women were an extremism. Not today. Today is just the opposite. So, the center is defined as what is normal, average behavior, the expected thought, Bell's curve. What is common is in the center. And we can talk about extreme ideas or extreme actions. In case of extreme actions, we are referring to using the force and breaking every boundaries and limits. So it's a synonym with terrorism. Extreme means extremist action. But it's not perfectly overlapped with extremism on the theoretical level. An extremist view doesn't necessarily implies violence. Extreme pacifism, not violent. On the contrary, for example, the partisan resistance in Italy subverted the fascist regime to recover democracy. Fascism is the extremism in this case. What about theoretical extremism? Synonym of fundamentalism, radicalism, polarization. Okay, radicalism is on the direction of extremism, but extremism implies a subversion with all possible means, while radical is the change of the situation, not necessarily implying every possible means. Radical is a strong position that criticizes what is given, what is the status quo, the normality. That's radical. While extremism is there is something that implies destruction. Am I wrong? Polarization has something to do with the presence of different positions that are far away each other. So polarization is a contrast between extremes. So at least one extreme position. And fundamentalism, I think, is referring more on the religious sphere. So yes, fundamentalism can be extremism, not necessarily. Fundamentalism is the same as radical. It's a strong position, for example, a strong faith and an absolutistical view founded on religious principle that embrace everything, and this is fundamentalism. Not necessarily has something to do with breaking an act of force. So I don't know if you agree, including as examples of extremism, QAnon, and also the common use of jihad and Ben Gvir party. Maybe I'm wrong, but what about if we define extremism as a theory that not only as an extreme proposition and implies a distrust of the status quo, without then rejecting, in principle, the use of violence. This can be considered an ideological extremism. What do you think? And now I would like to establish a scale from us, from me and from you, to the extreme of the extremism. I think that extremism has something to do with us, with everybody. I think that doesn't belong to others. It's a common tendency because we are humans. And it is a journey that starts from doubts, achieving dogmas, and start from the individual achieving the group. Has something to do with thinking in general about reality. We are able to questioning, to have doubts, and we have two different levels. One is a methodological doubt that is used in science, for example, and is also in philosophy, Husserlian epoche, suspension of the judgment, that is staying neutral and try to not to have prejudices. So try to avoid as much as possible every preconceptions, to be open and thinking freely about something. This is a methodological doubt. It means provisional, temporary. So I temporarily put everything aside to try to be neutral and listen the other, listen this idea, listen the experiment, listen the data, and in the most possible open-minded and clean view, to absorb the better, to understand. Then there is another passage that is a step of absolute skepticism, is questioning everything. Like in the Matrix movie, what if everything is an illusion. This kind of attitude, that questioning our possibility to know the truth, is unanswered, unanswerable. If we put in question the reason, the senses, or what we use to understand the world, we cannot reason, because the reason is a doubtful tool. We cannot then use the senses. Plato somehow goes in this direction. This level of radical skepticism is, for example, in the current model of called simulation theory. What if we are living in a simulation that is perfectly identical? It's exactly, we cannot discover that is a simulation because it's made so well that, so how can we know if we are living in a simulation in the first place, if this simulation implies cheating on us, even on the perfect coherence of the senses and data and experience? Well, we cannot prove that is wrong, and neither that is right. So it's just too extreme to follow the common way to discover knowledge, that is using reason and senses. So the heterodoxy of thinking in a different way and going out of the mainstream and refuting the common view, the orthodoxy of some field, as, I don't know, science or politics or psychology, or of the institutions in society. We get out, take a distance, and refute the entire normal way to interpret or to establish a community, a state, doing science or knowing the truth. We get out and we are in the heterodoxy. We are out of the norm, doxa. But then we take a step further with a position of assertiveness. It's not yet doubts. We abandon the doubts and we start to believing with a strong position, with radical force of what we are thinking differently by the herd. So we get out of the herd, we think differently, and we start to consider this approach, this extreme view, as normative, as strong. Our journey, we are approaching the first paradoxical metamorphosis from systematic doubt, from radical skepticism that is unbearable. So we must find some certainty, but we cannot use. We have abandoned the mainstream and the common tools that we had. Questioning everything, we are exposed to the need to some special revelation or intuition or enlightenment. For example, in Plato, in the moment that with the second sailing Plato rejects the senses, the sensitive experience is wrong, is false, is not grounded, is delusional. We have to just think poorly on ideas. If you can't, it's because you are not ready. So there is an esoterical, secret view or mystical approach that is just not so much defined, because can't be rational or sensitive or sensible. So we are approaching the need to have an ideology, a system that is proven by itself. Ideology is a way to understand reality that is unquestionable because the assumptions are coherent and consistent only on the ideology itself. It's a systematical way to dismantle every possible common sense and substitute it with a new view, unproven but self-proven. Just something that it's unquestionable, but it doesn't need to be proven. If you question it or if you reject it, you are just wrong. This is already wrong. So debating is already wrong, is something that you cannot do. So you have to accept it or reject it. And who is not accepting it is against it. So an ideological system is very strong, very cohesive, and intrinsically prone to the use of violence, because if you do not accept any common ground, as for example reason and senses or data or data's history, or that you can share with somebody that is outside of your group, what remains is just the use of force. This new model, embrace everything, and becomes the orthodoxy. We started from doubts and we are now in the self-centered dogmas. We started to questioning everything and now we have a system that explains everything. The pillar is not senses or reason, is a special source that can be, for example, a sacred text, God inspiration, a personal, intimate intuitions of the truth, of the ideas, or a master, a leader, a guru, or Mao and the Red Book, a source that is unquestionable, out of the doubts. So we are arrived on the maximum certainty. Ideology is the maximum no doubts. It's undoubtful. You cannot question an ideology. It's made to be unquestionable as intimate gears to avoid doubts. Who has doubts becomes heretic. So there is the truth and the falsity. Who is right and who is wrong? No middle ground. No different interpretations. No inside this census. This create a solid, cohesive group thinking that just adhere to the same principles and nobody can question them, and who is not in group is out group, is out, is wrongdoing. Everything else is evil. So this is a Manichaeism view of black and white situation. No middle ground, no discussion, no discussion inside, no dissenters, no different interpretations, and everything else is just wrong. Is out, is wrong. There is not true out of our enlightened revelation. Everybody else is just have to be so depreciated, despised, rejected, and or converted. No discussion, no debate, no dialogue, just asserting power. That's why the use of force. We are already entered in the extremism view of the world that implies for these same stances just oppression or oppressed and rebel. The individual that at the beginning was a free thinker and a explorer, a pioneer of a different way that was getting out from the main route, now is a fellowship of a herd, but illuminated, but enlightened, a herd but different. Of course, with my attitude can be perceived how I feel maybe dangerous this path. But I want to find positive aspects and not only problems in the human attitude that we have towards extremism. Extremism is wonderful when we are in the reign of art, in the reign of fantasy and invention, being completely out of every boundaries and far away from the main view is exactly the mission of art. Art is expressing diversity, is the complete freedom of exploring new ways and questioning everything and rebel to every norm and establishing new norm, new rules, new realities. Isn't that what make art astonishing? What's the matter if we do the same in society? Well, the matter is that I'm not just an avatar of your world. I am not just a simulacrum on your screen, and you are not just a number simulacrum on mine. We are not just an idola in the world of others. So the problem is the cohabitation. The problem is cohabiting among people that can have different views. There is only two ways, or weaponize ideas and using power and violence, or accepting a common ground, common values, so debate and discuss to discover what are the basic principles where we can adhere, accept everybody, even if we do not share any view of the world. This is the democratic way to let coexist in the same society the enrichment of multicultural, plural views, plural, even fundamentalist views of the world, different perspectives in the political spectrum or cultural spectrum that can live together only if we have a common ground base that we have to discuss and find together to agree on. It's a practical purpose that can avoid to crash into the extremism that harm others or that harm us. and maintain the good of the extremism in the form of exploring, enriching the society and giving value and fighting apathy, so being involved in the achieve of a sense or proposing a sense to others. Let me know what you think.